Okay, so we're just going to shoot this video simply as a overview and virtual walkthrough of the new Husqvarna, or new to me, Husqvarna EE5. So this is a full-blown motocross bike for kids. When kids graduate beyond the Pee-wee and they start jumping, they start going faster on the track, they need the ride height, they need the suspension, and they need more power. The time is then to step up to what has traditionally been the 50cc gas-powered two-stroke race bikes. So this breaks the mold basically on one of the most maintenance-intensive and dreaded periods of a kid's motocross career by parents. So I knew very well going into motocross that the Pee-wee 50s were going to be simple, easy, reliable, and fun for the kids to learn on. But when they went beyond that Pee-wee, it was going to start to become an absolute nightmare because the bikes are fast, they have real racing components on them, and with that takes real maintenance. So we're talking air filters after every ride. We're talking top end rebuilds after 20 hours or so, unless you want to just run it until it breaks and then you have a bigger problem on your hands. We're talking about clutches, upgrading clutches to that last longer. We're talking about changing the clutch fluid every 2 hours on a Cobra, adjusting the torque on the centrifugal clutch drives just to make sure that they don't tear themselves up. So essentially, we're talking about mega maintenance when it comes time for the fast 50s, I call them, the two-stroke 50cc race bikes. So the solution to that is the Husqvarna, the KTM, and the Gas battery electric powered 50cc equivalent electric powered race bikes. And we're going to go over some of the key features of this bike. And some of the things that I'm going to point out are just absolutely mind-blowing on what they did with this bike. Essentially, this bike breaks the mold. This, to me, is the equivalent of a Tesla. So Tesla, in my opinion, broke the mold on electric vehicles. They are the instigator of the movement to electric vehicles by all the other manufacturers, in my opinion. So it wasn't until Tesla came out with a extremely reliable, very cool, and just very desirable electric car that all the other automobile manufacturers started trying to say, okay, now that's, I guess, what we need to do. So basically that's what I believe happened here too. KTM, obviously the parent company of Husqvarna and Gas, came out with the electric SX E5, I believe it is, and that's going to break the mold on electric motocross bikes. So they hit the target market that needs it the most, which is the fast 50s market. So that's the kids that are basically around 5 to 8 years old that are too big or getting too fast for the Pee-wees, and they jump up to a really high-strung 50cc that's very high maintenance. So basically they targeted the bike that could use the electric replacement the best and ease maintenance concerns from parents that are looking to get their kids into the sport and give them something safe and fast to ride. So basically, in my opinion, KTM is going to break the mold here on electric dirt bikes and electric race bikes. So all the other companies, in my opinion, are going to be several years behind. Obviously, they're already a year plus behind on this. So I got to imagine that the big four, Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha, and Suzuki, and I got to feel that Honda and Yamaha are going to be the forerunners. They have some catching up to do, so they're losing a huge market segment on those bikes already because Honda and Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki all do not have a fast 50. So basically, it's only KTM's, Husqvarna's, Gas's, and Cobras that are in the fast 50 segment. So all the other bikes they start from 65s and up. And Honda doesn't even have something until the 150R, which is a 4-stroke race bike that's equivalent to an 80cc. So basically, to me, this is the game changer of bikes, and it's absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to go over the bike, and we're going to go over it piece by piece, and I'm going to tell you about it, basically, what I know, and how brilliant it actually is. Okay, so the first thing we're going to focus on, which is what you notice the most, is the motor and the battery pack here. So this is the motor assembly and the gearbox, and this is the battery pack. They call it a power pack unit. And it's very simple. The battery that's the power source. There's a speed controller, electronic speed controller, that obviously when you turn the throttle, it electronically controls the speed, and it outputs to the electric motor, which turns the gearbox, and turns your sprocket, which turns your chain, which turns your sprocket, and makes the bike go. So very simple. Same concept basically as a gas-powered engine, except that instead of using gas, it's using battery power. And instead of firing a piston up and down, it is using an electric motor to turn the gearbox, to turn the chain. So the battery pack on this is an air-cooled lithium-ion. They call it a Power Pack LV. The voltage is 43.2 volts, and it's a 907 watt-hour capacity. The approximate charging times are 0 to 80% in 45 minutes, 0 to 100% in 70 minutes. It's a maintenance-free battery, so that means there is no water levels to maintain on it like the batteries of old days. The motor is a brushless DC motor. The nominal power is 3 horsepower, and the maximum power is 7 horsepower. The maximum motor speed is 6,000 RPMs, and the cooling is air-cooled. There's no liquid-cooled option on this bike, so there's no radiators like there are in the gas counterparts, which cuts down weight and also maintenance as well. The bike is powered on by a button down here on top of the power pack, and we see it goes through its startup check. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll just put it in ride mode 1. And to confirm this, we're going to twist forward on the grip. And then the beep confirms that you are now locked into ride mode 1 and you're ready to go. And now we're going to check out the ride modes and how to select those. Okay, so this is our indicator here. This is our control center basically. As you can see, these 3 green bars mean that it has a full charge. And then this black button down here is going to be what you press to see what ride mode you're in. So now you see we're in ride mode 3. To change this, you press the button. We'll start at 1. So that's ride mode 1. And ride mode 1 has an approximate torque value of 4.4 foot-pounds and a top speed of 7.5 miles per hour. I've observed ride mode 1 to be about as fast as a balance bike, a kid powering a balance bike with their feet, or a Stasic bike on about the second speed. So it's super, super slow. And then we go down to ride mode 2. And ride mode 2 bumps it up to 6.6 pounds-feet of torque and 13 miles an hour. Ride mode 2 is basically, okay, you got the hang of it, and we're going to let you go a little bit faster. So whereas ride mode 1 is like an orientation mode to just let the kid get on the bike and feel how the power is applied and maybe just tow you around the yard a little bit. Ride mode 2 is like, okay, I can see you know what you're doing, and we're going to let you go a little bit faster. But it's actually not fast enough for a track. It probably will not allow the bike to get air over any jumps. So it's still a very safe mode. Jumping down to 3 is where things get fun. So we go to ride mode 3, and this bumps us up to 7.7 pounds-feet of torque and to 31.1 miles an hour. So we go from 13 miles an hour in ride mode 2 to 31 miles an hour in ride mode 3. This is where I settled on for Renan because he's an experienced Pee-wee rider, and his Pee-wee, I think, probably on a good day might go about 30 if he opens it up and gives it room. So this is a speed that he's basically familiar with, and he needs to basically go this fast to make the bike work well on a track. to be able to clear jumps, to be able to power out of turns, and just keep momentum. So ride mode 3 is a really good all-around ride mode for the 6-year-old that's been on a bike for a little while, or maybe an older kid that's just getting on the bike and is a little bit heavier. So it is a 31 mile an hour speed though. So going down to ride mode 4, which is cumulative here, 3 plus 1 equals 4, we bump up to 8.9 foot-pounds of torque and 44.1 miles an hour. So this is all based on a kid that's between 50 and 80 pounds, I think. So this is really fast. 44 miles an hour, that's no joke. So that's pretty quick. We haven't experienced ride mode 4 yet. I think they consider ride mode 4 to be the semi-pro. Ride mode 3 is a advanced. Ride mode 1 is like a parental training mode. Ride mode 2, I'm not sure what they call it. Actually, under the seat, we'll be able to show you that. So we go to ride mode 5, which is, again, 3 plus 2 equals 5. And that bumps us up to 10.1 foot-pounds of torque and gives us 45.4 miles per hour. So just a little bit faster than ride mode 4. And ride mode 5, I believe, is where most of the kids that are racing settle on, because it's basically the mode to which it goes the fastest, but it does not have the recuperation function enabled on it. The recuperation function is actually regenerative braking, to where when you're off the power, the motor will create drag and it will try to recharge the battery. And this is something that has been in Formula One. It's actually called KERS in Formula One. And it's an excellent idea, but I believe the reason why it's not commonly used in racing is because it tends to heat up the speed control and the power pack, and possibly causes the bike to maybe get a little bit too hot for racing. So, and of course, if you bump up to mode 6, which is all of these, so 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Ride mode 6 gives us the same foot-pounds of torque as 5 at 10.1, and the same miles per hour as 5 at 45.4. And however, ride mode 6, like I said, has the recuperation function on it, which is the regenerative braking. So typically people would think ride mode 6 is the fastest, let's put it on that, but it's actually not. Ride mode 5 and 6 have the same speed capabilities, except ride mode 5 does not have the recuperation function, whereas ride mode 6 does. It's also worth noting that ride mode 3 has the recuperation function as well. So the recuperation mode is activated by pushing the throttle forward beyond its limits. So whereas you twist the throttle to make the bike move, recuperation mode is twisting it forward. So it's essentially like adding an electronic engine brake system to it. So I don't think this is something that the kids are going to use too often. This is kind of hard to do physically. It's hard to push this forward. And I don't really see it coming into play too much with the kids on the bike. So while a nice feature, I think only the advanced of kids would be able to understand it and use it. On the left side, we're going to see a kill switch. Basically, this lanyard will go around your rider's wrist, and it's very stretchy. But when this pulls out, it will kill the bike just as if you had a on-off switch. So the kid cannot get back on it and ride once the lanyard has been pulled, and they then have to go through and do the startup sequence. So let's say the kid falls and this lanyard comes out. You then have to go and put it back in the mode for them, and then press forward and confirm it all over again. So most kids probably aren't going to remember to do that. Some probably will. However, I think it's meant to be a safety measure. So when the bike falls, obviously it cuts the motor off, and no accidents can happen beyond that initial fall. And while a good safety measure, one of the things I can see that's a benefit for this bike while racing is the fact that if you leave this connected, the bike can fall over, the kid can fall and get right back up on it and go again without having to kickstart it like most other gas bikes. So that's a clear advantage in my opinion. So now we're going to remove the seat, which is really simple. You just turn this little clip pin there, and we see a really basic system down here, which is just an electrical connector. And there is another lanyard down here. And this lanyard is the parental control lanyard. So this lanyard has to be in to be able to set the modes. And then once you have your mode set, you can pull this lanyard out, and it will keep the kid from being able to change the modes. So if you have a pretty smart kid, which we all do, they're going to figure out how to change these modes. And let's say you start your kid out on 3, like mine, but he wants to go to 5, like he did today. He is going to figure out how to go to 5 fairly quickly and then sneak it in there without you saying he could do it. So if you don't trust your kid, basically, you're going to want to pull this lanyard out after you set the mode. The suspension on this bike is where I believe it really shines. So it has the same style WP air fork setup as its big brothers or bigger counterparts. This is a full racing shock, fully adjustable fork, I might say. Full racing fork, fully adjustable, and it's also an air shock. So you have an air tool, a pump that comes with the bike that you can check and adjust the air pressure on the fork with, which is the compression setting, and it is also fully adjustable on the rebound setting, which I'll show you now. So if you look here, you'll see a dial, and this is the rebound setting dial. It's fully adjustable, and the manual gives you options from comfort to sport to race, and the comfort setting is where I'm at right now. And that's to basically get my son used to the bike and get used to jumping with a little bit more forgiving and cushy of suspension. But it can be dialed up to support the faster riders that are out there pounding the tracks. And on this side, you're going to see this air cap right here, which when removed will allow you to connect the air pump tool. And it's basically an air pump with a digital gauge on it to where you can measure the air pressure in that fork and bleed off air pressure or add air pressure. And 2 bar is where they want this bike basically to be at. So it's there already, and it's just one of those little things that you can check just to make sure, especially if you find that the forks are a little bit too stiff maybe. The rear shock absorber on this bike is a full-blown nitrogen-filled and oil-filled race shock absorber. Remote reservoir. Obviously this is upside down reservoir down here, and it's fully adjustable with rebound, compression. There's high speed compression, low speed compression, and rebound adjustment. I went through, and there's a different video on that I'll produce that shows you how to adjust both the forks and the shocks. And also the greatest thing about this bike is what you can see up here, maybe, that it's a height adjustable system. So if the bike is too tall for your kid, you can lower it down to a shorter setting to reduce the height of the bike so the kid can fit on it better. And I did that on the rear. I set it to the lowest setting, and on the forks I also set them, as you can probably see before, they come up above the triple trees. So I added probably about 3/4 of an inch, or lowered the triple trees on the fork about 3/4 of an inch to be able to lower the ride height basically of the bike for my son. And not only can you adjust the ride height of the suspension, but you can also adjust the body height. So this body can be dropped down a notch, and we did that as well. So the bike came to us at full height, which to me is more applicable to about a 7 or 8 year old kid. But my boy being 6, he could benefit from the bike just being a little bit shorter so he can get his tippy toes on the ground. And by lowering the body 1 notch down to its lowest setting and the suspension to its lowest setting ride height wise, I think we set the bike up really nice for him. To me, this is one of the most outstanding and just top-notch features of this bike is the ability to customize the bike to your rider. They also sell a lowering kit so you can drop the bike even further if you have a smaller child. So the age range on this bike goes from 3 years old to 8. So you can basically start your 3-year-old on this bike, dropping the suspension and the ride height, the body, and the additional lowering kit. You can really drop this thing down low so a really small kid can ride on it. So that's the most profound feature, in my opinion, is that you're buying a bike that you can use with the same kit for 5 years. And that's just unheard of in motocross, basically. So they usually ride peewees from 3 years old to about 6, and then they jump on one of these bikes. Most kids that are fast will jump on these bikes around 5, and then kind of age out of them at 8 to where they go to a 65. So you're basically having to buy 2 bikes between the time when your kid starts riding and the time he's ready to go to a 65. So in my opinion, the investment was to keep my kid on the same bike until he was ready to jump up to a 65. And honestly, I really wish I would have had the option to buy this bike when he first started, because he could have stayed on the same bike his entire mini bike career, basically. Looking at the wheels and tires on this bike, they are full-blown racing brakes. These are Formula calipers, and you have a really lightweight disc brake system, and we have Maxxis Max Cross tires. This wheel is a 10-inch wheel. Obviously, it's a spoked wheel, and it has a really nice matte black finish on it. And of course, just like its real race bike brothers, it has a foot brake, rear brake system, a Formula master cylinder here, really nice, lightweight, and wide foot pegs. And going to the front brake, we see the same style of lightweight rotor, and it also has a Formula caliper right back here. This wheel in the front is a 12-inch wheel, Maxxis tires again, and you have the fork guards just like the big bikes. As you can see, the calipers right here. The front wheel is really easy to take off. You don't have to take the caliper off or anything. It's a really simple process. I had to do that to adjust the forks, but I was very surprised on how easy it was to do. See, it does have a normal motocross style sprocket, which is underneath here, and it has a triangle stand, which is nice to have, and it's got a regular rear sprocket. I believe it's a 45 tooth. The manual says there's 45, 46, and 47 tooth available. So I believe, I didn't count it, but this is probably the 45 tooth, but I'm not sure. And it has a gold chain, really high quality. It's obviously fully adjustable, just like its big bike counterparts. It's also worth noting that these are ODI grips. I love ODI grips, and these are thinner for the littler hands, so they're easy to grab. They're not big fat grips. They're just sized just right for the little riders. Rounding out the bike, as we look at it from afar here, the whole bike itself has a really, really nice, attractive plastics package. It looks like it's a real motocross race bike. There's no kid stuff, nothing kiddie about this bike. It's very racy looking. It's super cool looking, and looks like a real race bike, which obviously the kids love. So the parents also love it too, because like me, I feel like I'm getting a real high quality race ready bike. I had to do absolutely nothing to this bike, whereas the Pee-wee, we knew he was going to be bottoming out suspension because there's 2 inches of travel, and the clutch engagement is really soft, and you had to just kind of tweak on it. This bike, right from the showroom floor, I knew that I could put my kid on it and go straight to the track, which is actually what we did, but we ended up getting the event ended up getting rained out, so we didn't get to ride it at the track. But that's what it's made for. The KTM calls it ready to race. Husqvarna doesn't have that little moniker there, but it is absolutely ready to race. And that's an amazing thing for somebody like myself to have that ability to just not have to tinker with it and get done what's important is ride time for my son. So instead of tinkering and maintaining a bike, he's out there riding it. So that's the complete overview of the Husqvarna EE5 electric kids motocross race bike. And I'm really excited about this bike. I really wanted to share this with everybody because in my search for this bike, it led me to a lot of kids just ripping on them, and it looked really good, but I didn't know the full rundown of all it had until I started digging around in the owner's manual, which is what I did. I read the entire owner's manual, learned how to do everything on the bike, and even adjusted the ride height and the suspension myself to prepare it for my kid. And I thought this was knowledge that would be good to share with everybody that was also thinking about this bike. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the overview. I'm also going to have a video, a ride review video, what we thought about it, some action shots of my son Renan riding it, and we're going to do probably a kid's review, what the kid thinks about the bike, and a parent's review, what I think about the bike. So stay tuned for those. I hope you enjoyed it. I know this is a little bit long, but I like to be thorough on things like this, so if you stuck around, I appreciate that. If you like the content, check out my other videos. And if you like what you see, throw me a subscribe, and I'd really appreciate that. Thanks for watching. See you next time.